So you've been playing DBD and you keep getting found first every single match, or you're a killer main and there's this one Dwight who you aren't even sure is really here. Sit back and let me tell you how to hide so well your teammates will hate you, and tips for finding the survivors who min-maxed for hiding. First off, survivor mains. Let me introduce you to the perk Distortion. It's a perk from Jeff and it never leaves my loadout. It has a bit of a bad reputation because some survivors just want to curl up in the corner with their favorite issue of Silent Hill Badonkadonks undisturbed while the others are working diligently on playing the game. Distortion is going to perk block an absolutely obscene number of killer perks, such as Lethal Pursuer, Barbecue and Chili, and Nowhere to Hide. Essentially, if the killer is supposed to see your aura, they are SOL. It also blocks quite a few aura reading add-ons, so when the whole team is sporting Distortion, Mr. Whiskers is going to have to go sit in the corner and enjoy his helicopter stick all on his own. Distortion will force the killer to use their eyeballs and ear holes instead of relying on the beacon that is aura reading. So if you're a survivor and the killer seems to lock onto you at the beginning of the game, it could be that they have Lethal Pursuer and you lit up like a Christmas tree on Halloween night. If you run Distortion and lose tokens as soon as the game starts, it's lethal. Assume no one else is running Distortion and go the opposite way of the other survivors so they don't give away your position. Just make sure that you keep track of your tokens and loiter in the killer's terror radius to recharge. Also, if you're getting match after match of Ultimate Weapon, consider throwing Calm Spirit on your loadout. It's not the best perk, but with Ultimate Weapon in the meta, it can help. It will prevent screaming and it will make opening boxes or doing totem stuff much quieter, which is going to be helpful for some tips later on. If you're a killer main and struggling against Distortion, then number 1, why aren't you playing Legion? If you have Distortion on against a Legion, you might as well throw that in the garbage because it won't save you from their frenzy. Second, practice locating survivors without the use of aura reading perks. For example, you can practice figuring out where survivors spawn by running some bot games. Don't give the survivor bots Distortion. Put Lethal Pursuer on and load into maps over and over. You will notice a pattern of where the survivors will spawn. It's generally the farthest distance away, but I've loaded in and seen the killer within eye shot of me on Ormond, so it's weird sometimes. After you learn the spawn points, you don't need lethal anymore and can place another perk in that slot, or if you still want it, then even if the entire team is a bunch of Jeff stands, then you still have a ballpark idea of their spawn location. Third, you can run Ultimate Weapon. Distortion won't save the survivors from yelling ooh woo when you open a locker. Fourth, if you're chasing an injured survivor and these sons of bitches are running Distortion, Calm Spirit, Iron Will, and making scratch marks harder to see or go away faster, remember this very important tidbit. Always watch the bloodstains. A survivor can fake a direction with scratch marks, but if you ignore those and focus on the bloodstains, you won't be led in the wrong direction. Now, you've grabbed Jeff, gotten the goods, but by God, you keep getting caught and bodied anyway. You don't want to loop. That's hours of videos to watch and learn from, and you have dedicated yourself to jockeying gens. Me too, bud. You won't see me leading any 5-gen chases or getting flashy saves. I'm over here repairing gens and watching Jurassic Park. Let me tell you a few tips. First off, if you don't have it on already, I recommend turning on the heartbeat visual support over in the menu options so long as having a giant, massive, throbbing, pulsating meat muscle in your chest isn't too distracting. Especially if you're running with a chatty Swift, you have a head cold, you're watching Jurassic Park, or you just struggle with terror radius proximity. This is going to help you figure out when it's time to GTFO. Now when I say GTFO, what I mean here is don't run. If the killer made eye contact with you and is bearing down on you like a seagull on a 2-year-old with a churro, then yeah, run. But generally speaking, unless you are dealing with stealth killers where you need to see them coming, you should keep a wall or a gen between you and the killer. So if you've managed to nestle into a nice loop with lots of walls and you're well hidden and you notice that your visual heart is throbbing where the music is getting louder, go ahead and walk away from the gen. 99% of the time, the killer is going to come and check the gen, so if you start walking ahead of time, you can take cover without leaving the telltale scratch marks on the ground. Whenever there isn't any shake, rattle, and rolling over top another survivor's portrait, then you can be pretty sure that the killer is looking for a target and your gen location is next. Just a heads up, if the killer has barbecue and chili, you can hide from it in a locker. You can also hide behind the gen aura when the killer hooks. So if the killer picks up a survivor and is on the way to the hook, put the generator between you and the killer. It makes it so on a quick glance when barbecue activates, you are behind the gen aura. If you're against a doctor and they're about to clap those cheeks for a big boom, you can also hide in a locker. Just don't rely on lockers because they can be extremely dangerous dangerous against specific killers and metas. As a rule, if I'm against an artist and she just hooked, I take a few steps away from my generator and wait for her to throw birds before I get back on it. Same thing for unhooking. Unhook, move away, then heal, so if she chucks a flock of murder chickens at the hook, you won't be there to catch them. For DBD vets, this might sound like common sense, but if the killer is on the way, don't hide in a locker. First off, when I scooch off a gen because I heard them coming, they almost always check the lockers. Also, it's definitely not as safe anymore now that ultimate weapon is in the meta. Lockers are almost never safe against a huntress, trickster, or dredge due to reloads and Narnia visits. If you have evacuated a generator because you hear Nemesis thumping over, try to move to a rock formation nearby. I don't like to do the ones behind the loop against the back because if the killer is checking, they usually check behind first. If the killer is using ultimate weapon, you're kinda SOL on the strategy unless you run Calm Spirit. Come out of the hiding spot slowly and abuse that camera angle to try and figure out what angle the killer is coming in at. Once you've confirmed the angle, go the opposite way and take cover around rocks. If they're heading the opposite side, slowly move from rock to rock until you're far enough away that it would be an absolute waste. Again, I love distortion here because I don't know how many times a killer checked on a gen and I'm hiding behind a rock and I lose a token and they just take off. Just make sure you stay crouched or you will disturb a bird. For killer mains, get used to watching those birds. Sometimes a killer has gotten so close that I had to stand and try to scoot while their back is turned, and I pissed off an entire flock of crows and the killer had no clue at all because I wasn't running and leaving scratch marks. Also, if you're playing Myers, I occasionally just do quick stock so I don't slow down too much, but if a survivor's booty is sticking out, they'll be lit up and save you some time. Speaking of birds, killers disturb birds too, other than Wraith when he's cloaked and Ghosty, Piggo, and Alien Kitty when they're crouching. Okay, so now you've got the basics down, but you need the intensive shit. Yeah, you've got a Dwight who wouldn't know a generator if he swallowed it and had to give birth to it via an asshole. He has 0 hooks and unhooks, and you honestly have no clue what he's been doing all game to not get crows. Well, let me tell you what he's been doing all game to not get crows. First off, if you've been sitting in a spot for too long, you're going to get crows even if you're moving. Now, I found running will run off the crows. You don't want to have the killer find you, so you really want to stay in one spot, find a nice grassy area, preferably behind cover, and run in circles. Your scratch marks aren't going to be too apparent because it's a small area. The grass hides the marks well, and behind a wall is a little extra cover. You're still going to disturb crows, which the killer can spot, but in a pinch it can help. Try to leave the area if you can. This is why you can technically just low ride around the edge of the map without idle crows. If you leave the area, the game counts it as playing, whether you are doing things or not. Now, my favorite methods of staying hidden are touching totems and boxes. You can touch a gen to prevent idle crows, but then the killer will know someone was in the area working on it. And if you want that Dwight caught first, you need to avoid tipping off your location. The beautiful thing about totems is that you can start them and just never finish them. It counts as working towards an objective, but if you just release the totem when it's almost done, it still counts even though you never broke it. Easy peasy. Similarly with chests, just coming out of hiding, lay your hands on the box and then scoot. Technically you can pick up and drop items, but it's not always worked for me and you're much easier to spot from standing and dropping. I play Tombstone Mikey hide and seek with my friends regularly, and I can just sit in the basement the entire time and just poke the chest and never open it. Obviously, killer side, if there are 0 generators being worked on and you can't find these bastards, figure out where your totems and chests are. Get yourself a high place and watch these targets for around 60 seconds. That is when the first idle crow will appear. 100 seconds will get your big alert. So if they really aren't doing anything and you're super patient, just camp each smaller objective to slowly force the survivors out so they try and get to their objectives or they're gonna get the big idle crows. If you end up in a match with a survivor and a bot because someone DC'd, then injure the bot. Don't down it, just injure it. First off, the injured bot will go look for a med kit in a box, which will make it harder for the non-bot to find something to do while they're idle. Keep an eye on the bot because when it is out of healing options, 8 out of 10 times they will go straight to the remaining survivor to bag for heals. Good luck out there, kids.